Hello, my name is Ian St. John. I'm delighted to welcome you this evening, this latest in my ongoing series of St. John's Pipecasts. Our topic today will be the concept of power in economics. So what is power in economics? I'm going to define it as the ability to shift the terms of trade in a transaction to one's advantage. The greater degree to which one can shift the terms of transactions for one's benefit, the greater the power one possesses, whether one chooses to exert that power or not. Let me illustrate what I mean by reference to an Edgeworth box. Now, this diagram contains two types of thing: two persons and two products. There are two persons, person A in the bottom left-hand corner and person B in the top right-hand corner. These two persons have access to two goods, good 1 and good 2. The amount of good 1 available is shown by the vertical sides of the box. The amount of good 2 available is shown by the horizontal lines. We assume that goods 1 and good 2 are completely divided between the two persons. Any point inside the box shows how much of good 1 and good 2 persons A and B have. For example, at point X, person A has O1A amount of good 1 and O1B amount of good 2, while person B has O2C amount of good 1 and O2D amount of good 2. Put simply, points located towards the top right-hand corner of the box are good for person A, since they will have large amounts of goods 1 and 2, but less good for person B, who will have less of both goods. Person B would rather have the combinations of goods located closer to the bottom left-hand corner, where they will have the larger share of the two goods. The curved lines in this diagram represent indifference curves. These are combinations of the two goods, which yield a given person equal amounts of happiness, so they don't care which combination they have along a given line. So, if we look at the lower bending blue line, the one with the letter W on it, this is the indifference curve for person A. At point X, person A has O1A of good 1 and O1B of good 2. The indifference curve passes through this point and shows other combinations of goods 1 and 2 which yield person A the same amount of happiness they had at point X. Such a point is W. Person A likes the combination of goods 1 and 2 at W equal to the amount they like the combination of goods at X. They are, we say, indifferent between them. As you will see, as they move down the indifference curve, they get more of good 2, but they have to give up some of good A to get it. Only then does their total happiness stay the same. If they got more of good 1 and good 2, they will be unequivocally happier. So they wouldn't be indifferent between the two sets of goods, and hence not on the line. The upper bending orange line is the indifference curve for person B, showing combinations of goods 1 and 2 that leave them as happy as they were at combination X. How then can this diagram show power in economics? Well, look again at point X. At point X, person A has a lot of good 1, but not much of good 2, while at the same point, person B has a lot of good 2 and not much of good 1. This sets the stage for trade. Person A can swap good 1, of which of course they have a lot, for good 2 from person B. The black diagonal line shows a possible trade line, with person A giving good 1 to B, in return for B giving good 2 to person A. Note that as persons A and B exchange along that line, they can both occupy higher indifference curves. Both could be better off than they were at point X. An obvious point for trading to stop is point Y, since at Y, both person 1 and person 2 have gained from trade. Both are occupying points above their initial indifference curves. Both are happier than they were at X. This is how trade benefits both parties. But Y is not the only place this trade can end up. Suppose B is a more powerful negotiator than A. Suppose B, indeed, is a multinational corporation that goes to a small farmer and says, "If you give me some of your crops, I will give you some seeds." The farmer will struggle to say no. His crops will rot if he doesn't sell them, and he needs the seeds for next year. The corporation is in a much stronger position. It deals with thousands of farmers. If one refuses to sell, well, it will hardly notice. So suppose in our diagram, the corporation we are calling person B sets the point of trade at W, saying to the farmer, "Let's agree to trade to point W, or we offer nothing. We simply walk away." Will farmer A accept this? Probably. Farmer A needs the seeds and needs to shift his crop. And farmer A is in no worse position at W than he was at X. He is, as we said, indifferent between W and X. Farmer A is no better or worse off at W than at X. But look at corporation B. They are much better off at W. The entire gains from trade, the gap between Z and W, has gone to them. Person B has greater power than person A, and they get the bulk of the gains from trade. Put simply, the greater the power imbalance in a transaction, the greater the degree to which that trade will advantage one person compared to another. Now, once one grasps this, well, one sees inequalities in exchange everywhere. The benefits from trade are rarely equally distributed. The powerful usually have the best of an exchange, and the more they have the best of exchanges, the more powerful they become, and so on. In economics, we encounter this phenomenon repeatedly. In the theory of monopoly, one firm produces the entire output of an industry and uses its power to maximize their profits at the expense of social welfare. We see it in monopsony, where one firm dominates the demand for a good and uses its power to shift the terms of trade against suppliers, be they supermarkets paying low prices to small businesses, or Spotify paying artists only $0.004 per music stream. It is most conspicuous in the labour market. The employment contract is systematically unbalanced in its power relationship, with the result that workers are at a disadvantage when negotiating pay with their employer. Just imagine how the salary negotiations go when you land your coveted job with Goldman Sachs or Ernst Young. Who sets the wage? You or them? Obviously, small, insecure, desperate you, for whom this job promises to be your world, and for which you've been told you've had to compete with thousands of highly qualified, rivals are in no condition to negotiate with Goldman Sachs, a multi-billion-dollar company with thousands of employees who would hardly know whether you work for them or not. They set the terms of the exchange, and you accept. They have the power, and you don't. Now, there are two types of power here. The first is the power to confront risk. A company usually has far greater resources than a worker. If a worker walks away from a job, the company can usually keep going pretty well. But if the worker walks away, their life prospects will be damaged, possibly wrecked. Labour is a fast depreciating commodity. You can't store it up. If the worker isn't working, they will soon be starving. To turn down a salary offer for the worker is extremely risky. For a firm to lose a worker due to a low wage offer carries minimal risk. They just turn to the next person waiting outside in the queue. Second, information. This is the second great asymmetry. The company can fairly estimate what the worker is worth to them. The worker will struggle to know this. How much are you worth to Goldman Sachs? You probably have no idea. And if you don't know the basic terms of the exchange, how can you really negotiate at all? You just get what they tell you are worth. In terms of an Edgeworth box diagram, you're very likely to end up at W, far from Z, or even the midpoint Y. The implication is that wages are in part a product of power relations. This is something economics has poorly acknowledged. That was made much of many years ago by Karl Marx. Within limits, wages are indeterminate, depending on the outcome of a negotiation in which the balance of power is distinctly unbalanced. This became apparent when the first minimum wage laws were introduced. Just about every economist said that if you set wages above the going equilibrium wage in a market, the result would be unemployment. This diagram shows a conventional market for labour. The existing equilibrium wage is W1, where the demand for labour and supply of labour are equal at Q1. If you set a minimum wage above the equilibrium wage, then the supply of labour will increase to Q5 and the demand for labour will fall to Q min. And the result is unemployment equal to the gap between Q5 and Q min. That was a diagram in every economics textbook, but it turned out to be completely wrong. When the minimum wage was introduced in 1998, employment did not fall at all. There was no unemployment as a result. The conventional theory, quite simply, was exploded. Why? Because power had been on the side of the employers, and they used that power to shift the terms of exchange in wage negotiations in their favour. In our Edgeworth box diagram, they used their power to push the worker as close to W as they could, the employer benefiting disproportionately from the trade. In a sense, what happened when the minimum wage was introduced was the state came along to the wage negotiations, acting as the worker's minder, and said, you pay the worker more or else. And guess what the employers did? Yes, they paid more. The power imbalance was reduced, and the terms of trade shifted a bit more towards the workers. This is why power matters in economics. Prices, wages, rents, profits all reflect the power relationships underpinning them. Now, this should not surprise us. Economics is a study of scarcity. And in a scarce world, there'll be a contest for resources, as Darwin saw. The big fish eat the little fish. Now, the classical economists saw the market system as distributing power more widely through society, and there is truth in this. But to distribute power is not to equalise it. And within the market system, there's a perpetual tendency for centres of economic power to form and shift the terms of trade in their interest. There is no shortage of big fish in the world today, and the little fish would do well to group together and challenge them, or they may vote for a state, promising to shift the terms of economic exchange in their favour. Now, whether the state can effectively redress economic imbalances, and whether ordinary people are better off when they seek to do so, are profound and tricky questions. For the time being, economists are best off assuming that power should be a term in all of their equations. Thank you.